Ted Cruz confronts Elizabeth Warren, and the tension was unmistakable. The cameras were rolling, reporters were perched on the edge of their seats. The atmosphere felt less like a press briefing and more like a political duel. At the heart of it stood two giants of American politics, Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Elizabeth Warren. The doors opened. Cruz stepped into the room with his usual calculated calm, like a seasoned litigator stepping into a courtroom he already knew he'd win. The chatter stopped. Reporters straightened up. Every camera swung toward him as he adjusted the mic, eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Then, with his signature sharp delivery, he dropped the first rhetorical bomb. Let me be clear. What you're about to hear will unravel one of the most dishonest narratives being peddled in Washington today. A hush fell over the room. Reporters glanced at one another. Viewers at home leaned in. Cruz had their full attention. He continued, his voice unwavering. For weeks now, Senator Warren and her Democratic allies have been promoting reckless policies under the guise of justice. But today, I will show you the reality. They are selling fiction, not solutions. A voice cut through the silence. Senator Cruz, came the question, from CNN's senior political correspondent, always the one to press hard. Are you accusing Senator Warren of lying? Cruz leaned in slightly, his gaze locking with the reporter. A small smirk formed. Not just lying, he said slowly, deliberately. Misleading millions of Americans. Gasps echoed, a pen dropped. Whispers spread like wildfire. This was no ordinary press event. This was war. At the back of the room, Senator Warren sat motionless, her hands clenched tightly on the table. She knew this was coming, but not how far it would go. Warren adjusted her posture, keeping her expression composed even as her fingers tapped rhythmically on the table. This wasn't a debate. It was an ambush. Another reporter broke the tension. If you're claiming deception, Senator Cruz, where's the proof? Cruz didn't hesitate. I thought you'd never ask. He reached beneath the podium, pulling out a thick folder and holding it high for the cameras. Right here, documented, verifiable evidence that pulls back the curtain. Warren crossed her arms, her eyes narrowed. This is absurd, she said, shaking her head. Another Republican stunt. Fear tactics and conspiracy theories. The American people are tired of this circus. Cruz turned toward her, expression sharp as a blade. On that, Senator Warren, we agree. The American people deserve better. Better than the half-truths and utopian schemes you keep feeding them. The air was heavy. Some reporters scribbled furiously. Others simply watched, transfixed by the tension unfolding before them. The CNN correspondent pushed again. All right then, Senator Cruz, what's in the folder? Cruz flipped it open with precision. Let's begin with your own words, Senator Warren, he said, pulling out a printed quote. You recently stated, and I quote, there is no economic crisis, only corporate hysteria. He turned toward the cameras. Tell me, is it corporate hysteria when inflation crushes the middle class? When small businesses shut down under excessive regulation? When energy prices skyrocket because of reckless environmental mandates? Warren leaned forward, her tone clipped. That's a gross mischaracterization of my statement. Cruz raised an eyebrow. Really? Then let's talk about what you didn't say, because in politics, silence can be just as revealing. He flipped to another page, preparing to drive his next point home. When small businesses were looted, when cities were on fire, and innocent people were injured, you refused to condemn it. Why, Senator Warren? Warren scoffed. That's simply not true. Cruz didn't flinch. He leaned forward. Then say it. Right here. Right now. Condemn the violence. The room went still. Every reporter's eyes were locked on Warren. The camera zoomed in. She remained silent. Cruz gave a tight smile. Exactly what I thought. Whispers rippled through the room. Warren's silence echoed louder than words. Cruz calmly placed the folder back on the podium. I have more, much more, but in the interest of fairness, let's give Senator Warren a chance to explain herself. He motioned toward her with a sharp gesture. Go ahead, defend your record. Warren took a deep breath, steadying herself. She straightened her back and fixed her gaze on the press, not Cruz. Gladly, she said, her voice measured but firm. Let's be absolutely clear about what's happening here. This isn't about truth. This is about Republicans, like Senator Cruz, manufacturing outrage and weaponizing fear to divide Americans. Cruz chuckled, shaking his head. A classic Warren deflection. Cornered, attack the messenger. Warren ignored the jab and faced the room. This entire charade is meant to distract you from real issues: poverty, racial injustice, rising healthcare costs. While Senator Cruz waves folders and tries to perform for the cameras, real Americans are hurting. Cruz leaned casually on the podium, smirking. They're hurting, Senator, because of failed policies like yours. Warren turned toward him, eyes locked. Then tell me, Ted, besides grandstanding on cable news, what exactly have you done for struggling families? That landed, a murmur swept across the room. Reporters leaned forward. The heat had turned into open fire. Cruz didn't waver. Unlike you, I don't just give speeches, I legislate. Let's walk through a few facts, shall we? He lifted another page from the folder. Cities run by Democrats, like your allies, are seeing record crime rates. Small businesses are closing, families can't afford groceries. And you call that progress? Warren crossed her arms. That's a gross oversimplification, and you know it. Crime is a multi-layered issue. Cruz interrupted sharply. Not that layered. Enforce the law. Hold criminals accountable. Stop turning public safety into a political game. Warren's eyes darkened. You want to talk about accountability? Let's talk about your party's corruption, election denialism, tax breaks for billionaires, corporate lobbying. While working families fall behind, your donors keep cashing in. Cruz didn't even blink. You're right. Let's talk about accountability. That's exactly what we're doing here. The cameras zoomed closer. The air practically crackled with tension. And while we're at it, Cruz continued, tapping the folder again, let's discuss something else. Something you've conveniently dodged. He pulled out another document. Your campaign donors. Warren's expression flickered, just a second, but Cruz saw it, and so did the cameras. Warren shifted slightly in her seat, but kept her voice steady. You're reaching, Ted. What exactly are you implying? Cruz held up the document for the room to see. I'm not implying, I'm stating facts. This, he placed the paper on the podium, lists donors bankrolling your campaign. Some of them are tied to foreign-linked lobbying groups, ones with, let's say, questionable track records. Reporters leaned in. This wasn't just political theater anymore. This was a firestorm. Warren pressed her lips together, choosing her words carefully. Every donation to my campaign is legal and publicly disclosed. Cruz smirked. Publicly disclosed? Sure. But ethically disclosed? That's a different question. He waved another report. This shows that some of your top donors have direct ties to lobbying groups with agendas that contradict your public statements. Warren interrupted, voice sharper now. And what about your side, Ted? Should we talk about the dark money super PACs propping up Republican campaigns? Cruz gave a firm nod. Absolutely. If there's corruption on my side, expose it. I welcome transparency. But don't change the subject, Senator Warren, Cruz pressed, voice firm. We're talking about your donors, right now. Warren let out a sharp breath, her frustration showing. This is a smear tactic, plain and simple. It's what Republicans do when they have nothing real to offer the American people. Cruz shrugged nonchalantly. If it's a smear, then refute it, right here, right now. Tell us why these groups are funneling money into your campaign. Warren paused, just for a moment, but it was long enough. Cruz caught it. So did the cameras. The room held its breath. Seconds ticked by. Cruz leaned in, voice low and deliberate. No answer? Interesting. Warren's jaw tightened. This conversation is a joke, she said, her tone rising. A waste of time and an insult to the people we're supposed to serve. Cruz smiled calmly. You're free to leave, Senator, but walking away doesn't make the facts disappear. Warren balled her fist, trying to control her reaction. I'm not going anywhere. Cruz turned toward the reporters. Then let's keep going, because I'm just getting started. Warren leaned forward, her frustration now impossible to hide. Enough of this nonsense, she snapped. This is nothing but political theater. Cruz tilted his head slightly. Funny, because facts don't care if you call them theater. He reached for another document. The cameras zoomed in again. Let's talk about something your office conveniently chose to oppose, a bipartisan bill designed to increase transparency in campaign funding. Why did you push against it? Warren scoffed. Because it was a Republican trap, crafted to target progressive voices under the guise of transparency. Cruz flipping it through the folder casually. That's interesting because according to the bill's text, both Democratic and Republican candidates would have to meet the same disclosure standards. So again, why block it? Warren's jaw clenched. Because it was written to undermine grassroots organizing and silence minority-led initiatives. Cruz raised a brow. So let me get this straight. You believe that increased transparency in political donations is somehow an attack on minority groups? A murmur moved through the room. Even a few sympathetic journalists exchanged glances. Warren exhaled heavily. This is a distraction. Voters don't care about this. They care about healthcare, issues, and surviving in this economy, not these so-called exposés. Cruz crossed his arms. And yet, instead of answering the question, you pivot again. Let me ask you something, Senator. If there's nothing shady about your campaign finances, then why not embrace transparency? Warren's face hardened. Because I don't answer to bad faith actors playing gotcha games for headlines. Cruz smiled, sensing the momentum shift. That's what politicians say when they don't have a real answer. The tension in the room grew unbearable. For the first time, Warren looked visibly unsettled. Cruz's voice remained steady. We're not done. Let's address something else you've conveniently avoided. Warren's grip tightened on the table. She knew what was coming, and she wasn't ready for it. Her fingers drummed rapidly on the surface. She had faced hard debates before, but this felt different. The cameras caught every beat of hesitation. Cruz turned a page. Let's shift to national security, he said. You've been in office long enough to take a stance, and yet some of your public statements have raised serious concerns. Warren didn't blink. Let me guess, another cherry-picked quote taken out of context? Cruz gave a small, measured smile. I'll let the American people be the judge. He lifted a paper and read aloud, voice unwavering. You once said, and I quote, some people did something, when referring to the events of 9/11. Do you still stand by that statement? Cruz asked, the room going instantly still. Even the most skeptical reporters recognized the danger of the question. Warren let out a slow breath. That comment has been deliberately twisted by bad faith actors. Like you, Senator Cruz. Cruz gave a slow nod. All right then, let's clarify. What exactly did you mean? Warren opened her mouth, but no words came out. Cruz pressed again, his tone sharper now. Was it just something, or was it a coordinated terrorist attack that murdered nearly 3,000 innocent Americans? Warren remained motionless. Her silence spoke volumes. I don't need to explain myself to someone deliberately misrepresenting my words, she finally said. Cruz raised an eyebrow. So you refuse to clarify? Warren crossed her arms. I refuse to play into your dishonest narrative. Cruz leaned forward. You mean the narrative where we hold public officials accountable for the words they use? Warren exhaled sharply. This entire conversation has been nothing but an attempt to smear me. Cruz smirked. You know what's interesting, Senator? Every time I bring up something controversial you've said, your first instinct isn't to clarify. It's to attack the question. The room remained quiet. Cameras rolled. Reporters watched every movement. You can dodge, you can deflect, Cruz said calmly. But the American people watching this, they see exactly what's going on. Warren shifted in her seat, visibly uncomfortable. For the first time, it looked like she wanted this press conference to end. But Cruz wasn't done. Let's move on to something even more important, he said, flipping to the next page in his folder. Your voting record. Warren inhaled sharply. What about it? Cruz's trademark smirk returned. You claim to stand with the working class, with everyday Americans. But your record says something else. He held up a sheet. You voted against tax relief for middle-class families, against tougher penalties for violent offenders, against a bill to protect small businesses from government overreach. Warren scoffed. Because those bills were written by Republicans who never intended to help real people. They were loaded with corporate giveaways. Cruz raised an eyebrow. So let me get this straight. You didn't oppose the bills because of their content, but because of who wrote them? Warren's jaw tightened. That's not what I said. Then explain it, Cruz snapped. Why block tax relief? Why make it harder for small businesses to survive? Because those bills were full of loopholes and favors for corporations, Warren shot back. Cruz nodded slowly and turned to the cameras. And yet, the very corporations you rail against, the ones you say corrupt our democracy, just happen to be your top donors. Gasps echoed around the room. Reporters turned to each other in disbelief. Warren opened her mouth to respond, but Cruz had already moved on. Let's talk about the people bankrolling your campaign, the same big money interests you claim to fight against. Warren let out an exasperated breath. This is ridiculous. Cruz leaned in. No, what's ridiculous is the hypocrisy. The American people deserve to know who you really serve. Warren's fist clenched. You can twist my record however you like, Ted, but I fight for the people. Then prove it, Cruz challenged, eyes locked on hers. Right here, right now. Silence. Warren swallowed hard. She had no clear response. The camera zoomed in. The pressure was visible. This, she finally said, voice low but tight with frustration, is exactly why people have lost trust in the media. It's all about spectacle. No one talks about the real issues anymore. Cruz didn't flinch. This isn't spectacle, it's accountability. And all you've done today is dodge. A quiet murmur spread among the press. The room had shifted. Even reporters who usually leaned in Warren's favor were now watching with measured eyes. A journalist at the back called out, Senator Warren, do you deny that some of your largest donors include corporations you've publicly criticized? You've publicly criticized these corporations, Cruz said, his eyes locked on hers. Warren gripped the microphone a little tighter. I've never taken money that influenced my votes. My record speaks for itself. Cruz smirked. Exactly, and your record shows that you voted against the very people you claim to fight for. Warren exhaled sharply, trying to redirect. Let's talk about your side for a moment, Senator Cruz. Let's talk about the billionaires and dark money funding your party. Cruz crossed his arms. Go ahead. I'm not afraid of transparency. Warren's lips pressed into a tight line. Her frustration was building. Cruz leaned in. You're scrambling, Elizabeth. The difference between us? I came here prepared. You came with talking points. The room was dead silent. Warren could feel the narrative slipping away. The cameras caught it all. Her hesitation, her tension, the subtle tremor of someone who realized she was losing ground. Cruz glanced at the clock. I could do this all day, but I think we both know you're out of time. Warren's fingers curled into fists. This isn't over. Cruz gave a knowing smirk. Oh, I know. We'll be having this conversation again, very soon. Warren pushed back from the table, trying to appear composed. The press conference was ending, but the political damage had already taken root, and she knew it. She stood up, straightened her blazer, and walked off without a word. Reporters continued firing questions, but she ignored them. Her heels echoed across the floor as she exited the room. Cruz watched her go, arms crossed, a small but unmistakable smirk on his lips. A reporter turned to him. Senator Cruz, do you believe today proved Elizabeth Warren is unfit for office? Cruz paused for a moment, then spoke with clarity and control. I think today proves something simple. When confronted with real accountability, the Democrats panic. They deflect, they attack the messenger, but they never actually answer the question. Another reporter followed up quickly. Do you think she should resign? Cruz tilted his head slightly. That's not for me to decide. That's for the American people. But I will say this, leaders should stand firm in their convictions, not collapse under the weight of their contradictions. Reporters scribbled furiously. Others exchanged glances. Warren had left the room, but her silence was louder than any statement she could have made. Cruz tapped his stack of papers into order and addressed the room one last time. I think that's enough for today. If you need more answers, you know where to find me. He turned on his heel and walked out just as he had entered, unshaken, undefeated. The cameras lingered on the empty podium. The air was still thick with energy. Warren's absence left a void impossible to ignore. The press conference was over. But the battle had just begun. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Clips of Warren's hesitation and Cruz's relentless questioning flooded social media. Hashtag Warren exposed and hashtag Cruz demolishes. Warren began trending. News networks aired heated debates. Political analysts dissected every pause, every slip, every unanswered question. Across town in her office, Warren scrolled through headlines. Elizabeth Warren panics under pressure, walks off instead of answering. Ted Cruz exposes Warren's hypocrisy, the video you need to see. Did Senator Warren just end her own career? Her staff moved around her in a frenzy, phones buzzing nonstop. Senator, we need a response. ASAP. Warren closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. Stay on message. Focus on Republican corruption. Call it a political hit job. Move forward. There was a pause, then a hesitant voice from her team. But people are asking why you didn't answer the questions. Her jaw clenched. Then we changed the conversation. Meanwhile, at Cruz's office across town, he leaned back in his chair watching the coverage. A staffer walked in. They're already trying to spin it. Cruz smirked. Let them. He tapped his fingers on the desk. On the television, a split screen showed him standing, strong, and Warren walking away. The truth is already out there, Cruz said. And no matter how hard they try to bury it, he glanced at the TV. The American people have seen what they needed to see. And just like that, the damage was done. Warren could try to shift the narrative. The media could try to cover for her. But in Washington, perception was everything. And this round belonged to Ted Cruz.